Hi and welcome. I'm Midnight Truth, and it's so nice to have you here tonight. Wherever you are right now, whether you're in bed, lie on the couch, or just looking for a quiet moment, I want you to know this time is for you. Take a deep breath in, and as you breathe out, feel the weight of the day start to fade. Let your mind settle. Let your body relax, and let yourself simply be. There's no rush, no pressure, just this calm, quiet moment. If you like, you can close your eyes and imagine yourself in a peaceful place. Maybe it's a cozy room with soft, warm lighting. Or maybe it's under a starry sky, with a gentle breeze brushing against you. Wherever you feel safe and calm, let yourself drift there. I know many of you use these stories to fall asleep. So before we begin, make sure to like this video and subscribe to the channel. Also, where are you from and what time is it there? Tonight's story is gentle and soothing, perfect to carry you into a deep, restful sleep. So settle in, get comfortable, and let's begin. I never thought I'd start over at 37. After the divorce, after selling the house, after signing those final papers, I packed everything I owned into a rented van and drove until I couldn't anymore. I ended up in a small town called Ashmill. Never heard of it before. Just a pin on a map and a rental listing that seemed too good to be true. A 2-story house, old but charming in the photos, for a price that made me suspicious. But I was tired. I wanted quiet. And more than anything, I needed a place where no one knew me. When I first saw the house, I nearly turned around. The pictures had done a good job of hiding the peeling paint and the overgrown weeds curling up the porch steps. It looked tired, sagging in places like it was exhaling a long breath that had been held for years. Still, something about it felt right, like it was waiting for someone. The landlord, a wiry man with slick back hair and too many keys jingling from his belt, handed me the front door key and barely stayed long enough to answer questions. "She's old, but solid," he muttered, eyes darting around the porch. "Been empty a while. Last tenant, well, they left in a hurry. But hey, folks get spooked by old pipes and creaky boards. Nothing to worry about." I should have pressed him on that, but I was tired, and I wanted to believe in new beginnings. So I smiled, signed a lease, and stepped inside. The air smelled like wood, dust, and something faintly metallic, like rust or old pennies. The floor groaned beneath my boots, not in protest, but like it was acknowledging me. I walked through each room slowly. The living room had a fireplace blackened from decades of use. The kitchen was narrow, with yellowing tiles and a humming refrigerator older than me. Upstairs, there were 2 bedrooms. I chose the one at the end of the hall, the one with the window facing the woods. That first night, I slept on the floor with my sleeping bag and a bottle of whiskey. No bed, no internet, just the sound of the wind brushing against the windows and the occasional creak from the walls. Old houses settle, I told myself, with expands. Nails shift. It's natural. But around 2 a.m., I woke to a loud thump upstairs. I sat up, heart racing, holding my breath. The room above me was empty. I hadn't even put anything in there yet. Maybe something fell off a shelf? Maybe I imagined it. I laid back down and closed my eyes. The thump came again. This time, slower, heavier, like someone walking. But no one was there. The next morning, I convinced myself it was nothing. Old houses are noisy. That's all. Over the next few days, I unpacked boxes, arranged furniture, and began settling in. I found a job at a local hardware store. The people were friendly in that small town, slightly suspicious way. They asked where I came from, what brought me to Ashmill. I kept my answers short. The less said, the better. One afternoon, I met my neighbor. Her name was Martha, late 50s, sharp-eyed, always wearing a cardigan no matter the weather. She was sweeping her porch when I walked out with a cup of coffee. "You're the new tenant?" she asked, eyeing me like I might bolt at any moment. "Yeah, moved in a few days ago." She nodded, tapping the broom against the railing. "You know, that house has been empty a while. Folks around here say it's got a history." I leaned against the railing, curious. What kind of history? She glanced at the house like it might overhear her. "Strange things. Tenant before you stayed just 2 months. Came running out in the middle of the night. screaming about footsteps. Said someone was whispering to him through the walls. He was never quite right after that. Wouldn't even come back for his things. I laughed, though it sounded forced. Maybe he had an overactive imagination. Martha didn't smile. Maybe there's something in that house that doesn't like to be ignored. That night, I lay in bed longer than usual. I kept thinking about what she'd said. Footsteps. Whispering. I wanted to shrug it off. But as the wind picked up outside and the house creaked and shifted around me, I felt the tension settle deep in my bones. Around midnight, I heard it again. Thump. Pause. Thump. It sounded like heavy feet on the upstairs floorboards. But I was already upstairs. My room was at the end of the hall. The only thing above me was the attic. I sat up, holding my breath. The footsteps were slow, deliberate. Not rats. Not creaks. It was the unmistakable rhythm of someone walking. I grabbed the flashlight from my nightstand and stepped into the hallway. The air was colder out there. Still, I tiptoed toward the attic door at the end of the hall. The footsteps had stopped. Just silence now, thick and pressing. I reached up, pulled the string, and the attic door creaked open with a soft groan. A wooden ladder unfolded, dusty and stiff. I climbed slowly, flashlight beam dancing across the attic floor. It was empty, except for an old trunk and some cobwebs. No footprints, no sign of anyone. I closed the attic and went back to bed, heart pounding. Maybe Martha was right. Maybe something didn't want to be ignored. But I wasn't ready to listen. Not yet. I told myself the same thing every night. It's just an old house. Old houses make noise. But deep down I knew there was something more. Something was waiting, and it had noticed me. The next morning, I woke up feeling like I hadn't slept at all. My body ached, my eyes burned, and there was a tightness in my chest I couldn't shake. It wasn't the kind of tired that comes from a long day. It was deeper than that, like something had drained me overnight. I told myself I just needed coffee. But the unease lingered. Downstairs, the kitchen felt colder than usual. I checked the thermostat. It hadn't changed. I poured myself a cup of coffee and stood by the window, looking out at the backyard. The woods beyond the fence were dark and dense, the kind of place kids would dare each other to go into after dark. The trees swayed with the wind, but the shadows between them seemed still, too still. As I turned away from the window, I heard a noise behind me, a faint whisper. I froze. It was so soft I wasn't sure if it came from inside or outside, or if I'd just imagined it. I held my breath and waited, listening. Nothing, just the hum of the fridge and the ticking of the old wall clock. I tried to shake it off. My nerves were on edge after last night. That's all. A hot shower and a normal day would fix it. At work, I tried to focus. I stocked shelves, helped customers, smiled when I had to. But I kept thinking about the attic, about the footsteps, about the whisper. When my shift ended, I found myself driving to the local library instead of going home. The building was small, tucked between a bakery and an antique shop. Inside, the air smelled like old paper and lemon polish. I found the town's public records section and pulled up a dusty binder labeled Ashmill Property Histories. It didn't take long to find the house. 110 Pine Hollow Lane, built in 1903. Original owner, Elias Thorne. I stared at the name. Elias Thorne. There was a small photo attached, grainy and black and white, but his eyes were sharp, intense. The write-up said he was a reclusive man who had an interest in the esoteric and mystical arts. He lived alone. No known family. No records of employment. Rumors swirled around him. Even back then, the notes mentioned that neighbors complained of strange smells, chanting, and strange symbols painted on the basement walls. Police investigated once, but found nothing. Elias died in 1926. Cause of death, unknown. I sat there for a long time, just staring at the page. Something about his eyes gave me chills. There was no emotion in them, just a blank, focused stare. When I got home, the house felt different. The light in the hallway flickered, even though I had just replaced the bulb the day before. The living room smelled faintly of sulfur, like struck matches, though I hadn't lit anything. I walked from room to room, checking windows, outlets, everything. Nothing seemed out of place, but the feeling remained, like the house was watching me, listening. That night, I couldn't sleep. I lay in bed with the blankets pulled up to my chest, eyes on the ceiling, waiting. The wind outside had stopped. The night was too quiet. And then I heard it. Not footsteps this time. Breathing. It was faint, but unmistakable. Slow, steady breaths. Not mine. I sat up, heart hammering in my chest. The sound was coming from the hallway. I grabbed the flashlight again and stepped out of my room. The hallway was dark, the light at the end flickering weakly. I moved slowly, every floorboard groaning beneath my feet. I could still hear the breathing. Closer now. I reached the top of the stairs and stopped. The air shifted. It was like something had moved past me, fast and cold. I turned, flashlight scanning the walls. Nothing, but I wasn't alone. I could feel it. I didn't sleep at all that night. The next morning, I noticed something I hadn't before. In the upstairs hallway, near the attic door, a part of the wallpaper was peeling. Not just peeling. It looked torn, like someone had clawed at it. I pulled at the edge and revealed something behind it. Symbols, painted directly onto the wood beneath the paper. Black, jagged symbols that made my stomach turn just looking at them. I didn't recognize any of them, but they looked old, angry. I took photos with my phone and went back to the library that afternoon. The librarian was an older man named Richard. I showed him the pictures and asked if he had ever seen anything like them. He stared at the screen for a long time before speaking. I haven't seen these in a very long time. They're not part of any language. At least none you'd find in modern books. They're protective symbols, or they were meant to be, but not in a good way. What do you mean? He looked up, his eyes serious. They don't keep things out. They keep things in. My mouth went dry. You mean something's trapped in the house? I don't know. But if those were painted by Elias Thorne, and if the stories are true, he wasn't trying to protect himself. He was trying to seal something inside. I left the library with a knot in my stomach. That night, I went into the attic again. It was colder than before. My breath came out in little clouds. The trunk in the corner that I had ignored the first time now seemed to draw my eyes. I knelt down and opened it. Inside was a thick, leather-bound journal. The pages were brittle, stained, some stuck together. I turned to the first page. It was handwritten, messy, almost frantic. To those who find this, beware. The door has been opened. I thought I could control it. I was wrong. I flipped through the pages. Rituals, symbols, descriptions of voices, shadows moving shapes, things seen in mirrors that weren't reflections. He wrote about a presence in the house. Something that spoke in dreams. Something that demanded attention. Obedience. Worship. And then, at the very end, I cannot contain it. It is not bound to walls or symbols anymore. It has learned. It waits. It wants a host. My hand shook. I closed the book and stepped back. Something scraped across the attic floor behind me. I turned fast, flashlight shaking in my grip. No one was there, but the air was thick, pressing, and I swear I heard it whisper again, closer this time, like it was right beside my ear. I didn't go back to sleep that night. I sat at the kitchen table with every light in the house turned on, the journal clutched in my hands. I read through the pages again, slower this time. Elias Thorne had been obsessed with something ancient. He called it the Watcher Beyond. According to his writings, it didn't have a face or a name that could be spoken without consequence. It was not a ghost, nor a demon in the way people usually imagined. It was older, a presence that existed behind reality. Something that waited to be let in. Elias had invited it, not out of curiosity, but out of desperation. He had lost his wife, his son. There were only fragments of those events in the journal. But what was clear was that grief had broken him. And in that brokenness, he found the rituals. He thought he could bring them back. But something else came instead. I stared at the pages until my vision blurred. The candle wax on the corners of the pages, the drawings, the symbols, the notes in the margins. Never speak its name. Don't let it follow you into sleep. Do not acknowledge the mirror. The mirror. I looked up and saw my reflection in the microwave door. It wasn't much of a mirror, just a dull metal surface. But in that moment, I swore I saw a movement. Something behind me, shifting. I turned quickly. Nothing. The house groaned and settled. And yet, it didn't feel like settling. It felt like breathing. The next day, I called in sick to work. I needed time to think, to figure out if I was losing my mind. I sat on the porch for hours, trying to rationalize everything. In the early afternoon, I saw her, an older woman, walking her dog down the street. She moved slowly, her gaze lingering on my house. Her expression tightened as she passed. I stood up. "Excuse me," I called. "Hi, I just moved in here." She stopped, hesitant. "That house?" "Yeah." She stared for a moment, then stepped closer, tugging her dog gently behind her. "You know, backslash, I remember the last person who lived there. Young woman. Didn't stay long." I swallowed. "What happened?" "She left in the middle of the night, screaming, drove off barefoot. I remember because the police came by later looking for her. Said she was talking nonsense. Said something was watching her from inside the walls." I said nothing, just nodded slowly. She said the same thing the man before her said. And the couple before that. It's an old house. Some say it's cursed. Others say it's just rotten. Whatever it is, no one stays long. Did anyone ever? She cut me off. "Don't try to fix it. Don't try to understand it. Just leave before it notices you." Then she turned and walked away. That night, I sat in bed with a journal open beside me and a baseball bat on my lap. I felt ridiculous, but I couldn't sleep. Every time I closed my eyes, I imagined those footsteps returning, that breathing, the feeling of something pressing down on my chest. And eventually, they did return. Sometime around 3 a.m., the air shifted. The room grew cold, and I heard it again, soft, dragging footsteps in the hallway. I held my breath. My hands clenched the bat, so tight my knuckles turned white. The steps paused outside my door. A shadow moved under the crack, too slow to be normal. It hovered there, and then tap, 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 3 soft knocks, like fingernails on wood. I didn't move, didn't breathe. Then the doorknob began to turn. It clicked once, twice, but it didn't open. Whatever it was just stood there, waiting, breathing. I grabbed the flashlight and turned it on. The moment the light hit the door, the handle stopped turning. The breathing stopped, but something scraped down the door. Long, slow, like nails dragging downward. Then silence. I didn't sleep after that. The next morning, I found something outside my bedroom door. A small, twisted piece of metal. Rusted, shaped like a hook or claw. I had never seen it before. It looked ancient. I picked it up with a tissue and put it in a plastic bag. I had no idea what to do with it, but I wasn't going to touch it with my bare hands. The journal had a page about objects, items that could carry the mark of the presence. Elias had written that if you found something like that in your space, it meant it had passed through, touched something, left something behind, and it meant it would return. I didn't want to go back into the attic, but I needed answers. That evening, just as the sun dipped below the trees, I climbed the narrow stairs again, flashlight in hand, journal under my arm. The attic was freezing, not just cold, unnaturally cold. My breath fogged instantly. The air was heavy, thick with the smell of dust and something sour, like old meat. The journal had said to burn a candle at the center of the attic, near the hatch. Elias had marked a circle there. He said the creature didn't like fire or light or noise, but it wasn't afraid. It just disliked attention. I lit a candle and waited. Minutes passed. Then the temperature dropped again, and from the far corner of the attic, I heard something move. A dragging sound. Slow, deliberate, then breathing. Not like before. This was heavier. Closer. I turned the flashlight toward the sound. There was nothing there. I turned back toward the candle and saw it. A shape, tall, dark, with limbs too long and bent at wrong angles. It stood just at the edge of the light, where shadows met flame. Its face, or what should have been its face, was a void, a smooth, blank space where eyes and mouth should be. It didn't move, but it didn't have to. The moment I saw it, I couldn't breathe. My chest locked up. My body went cold. My mind screamed at me to run, but my legs wouldn't move. Then it tilted its head, slowly, as if curious. The flame flickered. The shadows stretched toward me. I dropped the flashlight and ran. Down the stairs, through the hallway, past the kitchen. I didn't stop until I was outside, barefoot, standing in the middle of the street. The front door slowly creaked shut behind me. I stood there in the cold night air, shaking. My breath came in short gasps. I looked up at the house, at the dark windows. Nothing moved, but I knew it had seen me, and I had seen it. There was no going back now. I didn't go back to sleep that night. I sat at the kitchen table with every light in the house turned on, the journal clutched in my hands. I read through the pages again, slower this time. Elias Thorne had been obsessed with something ancient. He called it the Watcher Beyond. According to his writings, it didn't have a face or a name that could be spoken without consequence. It was not a ghost, nor a demon in the way people usually imagine. It was older, a presence that existed behind reality, something that waited to be let in. Elias had invited it, not out of curiosity, but out of desperation. He had lost his wife, his son. There were only fragments of those events in the journal. But what was clear was that grief had broken him, and in that brokenness, he found the rituals. He thought he could bring them back. But something else came instead. I stared at the pages until my vision blurred. The candle wax in the corners of the pages, the drawings of the symbols, the notes in the margins. Never speak its name. Don't let it follow you into sleep. Do not acknowledge the mirror. The mirror. I looked up and saw my reflection in the microwave door. It wasn't much of a mirror, just a dull metal surface. But in that moment, I swore I saw movement. Something behind me, shifting. I turned quickly. Nothing. The house groaned and settled, and yet it didn't feel like settling. It felt like breathing. The next day I called in sick to work. I needed time to think, to figure out if I was losing my mind. I sat on the porch for hours, trying to rationalize everything. In the early afternoon, I saw her, an older woman, walking her dog down the street. She moved slowly, her gaze lingering on my house. Her expression tightened as she passed. I stood up. "Excuse me." I called, "Hi, I just moved in here." She stopped, hesitant. "That house?" "Yeah." She stared for a moment, then stepped closer, tugging her dog gently behind her. "You know, I remember the last person who lived there. Young woman. Didn't stay long." I swallowed. "What happened?" "She left in the middle of the night, screaming, drove off barefoot. I remember because the police came by later looking for her. Said she was talking nonsense. Said something was watching her from inside the walls." I said nothing, just nodded slowly. She said the same thing the man before her said. And the couple before that. It's an old house. Some say it's cursed. Others say it's just rotten. Whatever it is, no one stays long. Did anyone ever... She cut me off. "Don't try to fix it. Don't try to understand it. Just leave before it notices you." Then she turned and walked away. That night, I sat in bed with the journal open beside me and a baseball bat on my lap. I felt ridiculous, but I couldn't sleep. Every time I closed my eyes, I imagined those footsteps returning, that breathing, the feeling of something pressing down on my chest. And eventually, they did return. Sometime around 3 a.m., the air shifted. The room grew cold, and I heard it again, soft, dragging footsteps in the hallway. I held my breath. My hands clenched the bat, so tight my knuckles turned white. The steps paused outside my door. A shadow moved on a crack, too slow to be normal. It hovered there, and then tap, 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 3 soft knocks, like fingernails on wood. I didn't move, didn't breathe, Then the doorknob began to turn. It clicked once, twice, but it didn't open. Whatever was just stood there, waiting, breathing. I grabbed a flashlight and turned it on. The moment the light hit the door, the handle stopped turning. The breathing stopped, but something scraped down the door. Long, slow, like nails dragging downward. Then silence. I didn't sleep after that. The next morning, I found something outside my bedroom door. A small, twisted piece of metal. Rusted, shaped like a hook or claw. I had never seen it before. It looked ancient. I picked it up with a tissue and put it in a plastic bag. I had no idea what to do with it. But I wasn't going to touch it with my bare hands. The journal had a page about objects, items that could carry the mark of the presence. Elias had written that if you found something like that in your space, it meant it had passed through, touched something, left something behind, and it meant it would return. I didn't want to go back into the attic, but I needed answers. That evening, just as the sun dipped below the trees, I climbed the narrow stairs again, flashlight in hand, journal under my arm. The attic was freezing. Not just cold, unnaturally cold. My breath fogged instantly. The air was heavy, thick with the smell of dust and something sour, like old meat. The journal had said to burn a candle at the center of the attic, near the hatch. Elias had marked a circle there. He said the creature didn't like fire, or light, or noise, but it wasn't afraid. It just disliked attention. I lit a candle and waited. Minutes passed. Then the temperature dropped again, and from the far corner of the attic, I heard something move. A dragging sound. Slow, deliberate, then breathing. Not like before. This was heavier. Closer. I turned the flashlight toward the sound. There was nothing there. I turned back toward the candle and saw it. A shape, tall, dark, with limbs too long and bent at wrong angles. It stood just at the edge of the light, where shadows met flame. Its face, or what should have been its face, was a void, a smooth, blank space where eyes and a mouth should be. It didn't move, but it didn't have to. The moment I saw it, I couldn't breathe. My chest locked up. My body went cold. My mind screamed at me to run, but my legs wouldn't move. Then it tilted its head. Slowly, as if curious. The flame flickered. The shadows stretched toward me. I dropped the flashlight and ran. Down the stairs, through the hallway, past the kitchen. I didn't stop until I was outside barefoot, standing in the middle of the street. The front door slowly creaked shut behind me. I stood there in the cold night air, shaking. My breath came in short gasps. I looked up at the house, at the dark windows. Nothing moved, but I knew it had seen me, and I had seen it. There was no going back now. I stayed in the motel for 3 nights. Every hour felt longer than the last. Sleep came in short, broken segments, and every time I drifted off, the dreams returned, always the same. The house, the attic, the faceless figure crawling down the walls like a spider made of shadows. I'd wake up gasping, drenched in sweat, and afraid to look toward the dark corners of the room. By the 4th morning, I couldn't take it anymore. Hiding wasn't helping. The thing, I didn't know what else to call it, was still with me. It didn't care where I went. Distance didn't matter. Whatever had been open in that house had already reached into me. I had to go back. Not to stay, just to understand. If I was going to have any chance at peace, I needed to know exactly what Elias had done. Maybe there was something in the journal I missed. Maybe something in the attic, or even hidden in the walls. I waited until midday when the sun was highest. I told myself it would make a difference. That daylight with protection. But deep down I knew better. When I pulled into the driveway, the house looked still. The kind of stillness you see in a predator waiting for the right moment, like it knew I was back. The front door was shut, locked just as I'd left it. But when I stepped inside, it was clear someone or something had been moving around. Items were knocked over. A chair was tipped on its side. The air had that burnt smell again, but stronger, like something had scorched the fabric of the place itself. I walked straight upstairs, past my bedroom, and into the attic. It was brighter than I remembered. A single shaft of sunlight pierced through the small, circular window near the roof, lighting the dust in the air like gold flecks floating in a storm. The wax circle was gone, not just smudged, completely erased. And there in the far corner was something new, a pile of old books and boxes I hadn't seen before. I approached cautiously, every instinct screaming for me to turn around. But I kept going. Most of the books were about the occult. Symbols, gateways, rituals. Some were in languages I couldn't read. Others were filled with illustrations that made my stomach turn. Figures with too many limbs, eyes in places they didn't belong. One book stood out, bound in leather, older than the rest. I opened it. It was Elias's handwriting. Not the journal I had already, but another one, an older one. He wrote about the first time he heard the whispers in the attic, how they spoke to him only at night, how he thought he was going mad. He wasn't alone. He had written letters to someone else, someone named Marla, who had lived in the house years before him. She had heard the same things, felt the same presence. Her final letter was transcribed in the journal. I performed the ritual exactly as the book said, but it was wrong. Something else answered, not the one I called, not even close. I tried to end it, to close the gate, but it isn't a door you open. It's a wound you make, and now it bleeds through everything. Elias wrote that he tried to burn the books, but every time he set them aflame, they reappeared in the attic the next morning untouched. There were drawings in the margins, spirals, eyes, a crude sketch of a figure that looked exactly like what I saw in the attic that night. The more I read, the more I felt it. A pull, like the house was breathing with me, inhaling my fear. Then something moved behind me. Slow, deliberate. I turned. Nothing was there. But when I looked back at the journal, a new line had been added beneath Marla's letter. It watches you now. The handwriting wasn't Elias's. I snapped the book shut and backed away. But as I reached the attic door, it slammed shut on its own. The temperature dropped instantly. My breath turned to fog. And then footsteps. They came from within the walls, scraping, like claws dragging along wood. Closer, closer. I screamed and threw my weight against the door. It wouldn't budge. The footsteps stopped, right behind me. I didn't turn. Couldn't. A hand touched my shoulder, ice cold, with fingers that felt too long, too thin. Then a whisper in my ear. He showed me the way. Now I'll show you. Everything went black. When I woke up, I was on the attic floor. The sun was gone. The window was dark. And the journal was open beside me. It begins when you notice. It ends when you surrender. That was 2 days ago. I haven't left the house since. I think I'm becoming part of it. Or it's becoming part of me. Shall I continue with chapter 6? It's been 3 days since I left that house. I'm living in a motel now, some nameless roadside place with buzzing lights and thin walls that let in every sound. I chose it because it felt temporary, like a place you pass through, not somewhere you settle. I thought that would help. It hasn't. At night, I hear the same things I heard in the house. The same dragging footsteps. The same whisper of my name, just as I'm about to fall asleep. I tell myself it's the motel guests, paper-thin walls, imagination. But deep down, I know that whatever I saw, whatever I heard, it came with me. And it's getting bolder. Last night, I woke up gasping for air. Not from a nightmare, but because something was pressing down on my chest. I couldn't see it, couldn't fight it. Just this crushing weight and the feeling of cold fingers pressing into my shoulders, holding me still. When it lifted, I ran to the bathroom and looked in the mirror. There were faint bruises on my skin. I didn't go back to sleep. Today I returned to the house. Not because I wanted to, but because I needed to understand. The journal. Elias's journal. It had more pages than I thought. After that night, new entries started appearing, written in the same frantic handwriting. They weren't dated, just rambling confessions and warnings. One line kept repeating, "It doesn't stay in the house. It stays with the blood." At first, I didn't understand. But the more I read, the more the pieces came together. Elias hadn't just opened something. He'd bound himself to it. Through ritual, through intention, through fear, and now I had done the same. There was one passage near the end that chilled me more than anything else. If you read this, it knows your voice. If you speak its name, it knows your breath. If you see it, it sees through you. It ended there. I needed answers. So I did the only thing I could think of. I went back to the attic. The door was open when I arrived, not unlocked. Asterisk, asterisk, open. Asterisk, asterisk. The house was exactly as I left it, but not. It felt hollow, like the walls were thinner, like the space between this world and something else had been pulled taut. I stood at the base of the attic ladder for a long time, just listening. There was nothing, no footsteps, no whispers, just a low hum, like distant chanting, buried beneath the silence. I climbed up. The attic was colder than I remembered. The candle had long since burned out, but the wax markings on the floor had changed. New symbols had appeared, scratched into the wood, not written, deep and erratic. In the center of the room was a small wooden box I hadn't seen before. It pulsed, not like a machine, not like a heartbeat, something deeper, like it was breathing the room in and out. I stepped closer. My hand moved before my mind caught up. I touched the lid. Cold, colder than anything I'd ever felt. It burned, and when I opened it, I saw only one thing, a mirror, small, oval, framed in iron. But it didn't show my reflection. It showed the attic, yes, but I wasn't in it. Instead, there was a figure sitting cross-legged in the center of the circle, head down, arms limp. It looked like a man at first. Then it looked like Elias. Then it looked like me. I dropped the mirror and stumbled back. But the mirror didn't fall. It hovered, inches from the ground, spinning slowly. And from its surface came a voice, not a whisper, not a growl, but something in between. The door was opened. The offering was made. The house does not forget. Suddenly, the attic pulsed with noise, laughter, screams, crying, all layered on top of each other. The candle flame reignited by itself. Blue. The attic door slammed shut. I ran to it, pulling, kicking, slamming my shoulder against it. But it wouldn't budge. Behind me, the laughter grew louder. And then footsteps. Slow. Wet. Like something dragging itself across the floor. I didn't look back. I couldn't. I screamed and slammed into the door again and again until finally, asterisk, asterisk, it opened. Asterisk, asterisk. I fell forward, hit the hallway floor hard, and scrambled to my feet. I didn't stop. Down the stairs, out the door, back to my car. I drove, fast, didn't even care where. I just needed distance. I ended up on the outskirts of town, somewhere empty. I sat by the side of the road, shaking, trying to understand what had just happened. That mirror, that figure, the voices, they weren't from the house. They were in me now. I checked my backpack. The journal was still there, but the last page had changed. New handwriting. Mine. I hadn't written it, but I knew the words. You can leave the house, but it never leaves you. I'm not going back. I can't, but I know it's not over. The dreams are getting worse. I hear chanting in my sleep. And last night, the mirror appeared on my bedside table. I hadn't taken it with me. I didn't even touch it. But there it was, waiting, just like the house. I didn't sleep at all last night. I couldn't. Every time I closed my eyes, I felt the mirror watching me. Not saw, felt. It was like a static charge in the room, crawling under my skin, humming behind my ears. Even when I turned my back to it, I knew exactly where it was in the dark. My body reacted before my mind did. Goosebumps, nausea, that tight animal fear that wraps around your ribs and doesn't let go. At 3:12 a.m., I heard a knock on the motel door. 3 taps. Soft, rhythmic. I didn't move. I held my breath and watched the door from across the room, clutching the edge of the bed like it could anchor me to reality. Another knock, this one louder, followed by something sliding across the door. Not nails, not hands, something wet. I don't remember falling asleep, but at some point, I woke up to morning light slipping through the blinds. The mirror was gone. I should have felt relieved, but I didn't, because in its place was a small piece of paper, folded once. I picked it up with shaking hands. It was from the journal, torn from the back. My handwriting again. Return what you've taken, or it will take you. I don't remember writing it, but I remembered what I had taken. The journal. I don't know why I still had it. Maybe some part of me believed it would explain things, that it would help me understand what I saw, what I felt. But now I realize it wasn't mine to keep. I had to go back. Not to the house. Not yet. I needed someone to help me, to explain, to confirm that I wasn't going insane. I remembered the neighbor, Mr. Albrecht. I hadn't seen him since I fled the house, but maybe he knew more than he let on. I found his address easily enough. Just 2 houses down from mine. A run-down 1-story with overgrown hedges and faded wind chimes hanging from the porch. I knocked once. Then again. No answer. But I heard something inside. A slow shuffle, followed by a creak. The door opened slightly. Mr. Albrecht stood there, thin and hunched, wearing the same cardigan he always wore. His eyes were sunken, and he looked even older than I remembered. "You shouldn't be here," he said, voice low and cracked. "I need to talk to you," I said. "About the house." He looked over my shoulder, then pulled me inside without a word. The living room was dark. The curtains were drawn, the furniture covered in plastic. Dust danced in the shafts of light that slipped through the edges. "You went into the attic, didn't you?" he said, sitting down heavily in an old recliner. I didn't answer. "You lit the candle." I nodded slowly. He sighed. "Foolish thing to do." "What is it?" I asked. "What did Elias do in that house?" Mr. Albrecht looked at me for a long time. Then he stood, disappeared into the hallway, and returned with an old photo album. He opened it to a yellowed page near the back and pointed to a black and white photo. "That's him. Elias Wren. Moved in sometime in the late 60s. Came from out west. Nobody knew much about him. Quiet, polite, but strange." The photo showed a man in a dark coat, standing in front of the house. Same porch. Same cracked windows. He bought the place dirt cheap. No one wanted it after what happened there during the war. But Elias, he didn't seem to care. Said he needed the solitude. "What happened during the war?" I asked. Albrecht looked at me. It wasn't the war that cursed that place. It was what he brought into it. He turned the page. Another photo. Elias again, but this time in the attic, surrounded by symbols, candles, books. He called himself a scholar. Said he studied ancient beliefs, Eastern mysticism. But I saw what he really was. A man obsessed. He'd talk about unseen layers of reality, about pulling things through, about voices that whispered in forgotten tongues. I swallowed. My mouth had gone dry. One night, people heard screaming. A light in the attic, brighter than fire, but cold. The next morning, he was gone, vanished. The police found the house empty, except for the symbols and that mirror. Albrecht looked me dead in the eye. They say the mirror was a window, not to another world, but to a thing waiting between them, something he called the listener. I felt sick. I saw it. I whispered, "In the attic, in the mirror." Albrecht flinched. "Then it saw you." He reached into his pocket and pulled out something small, a charm made of twine and bone. He pressed it into my palm. "It won't stop it, but it'll slow it down, long enough for you to finish what he started." "What do you mean?" "You need to go back, complete the ritual, close the door, burn the mirror." My breath caught. "Won't that release it?" He shook his head slowly. "No, it'll seal it, for a time, if you do it right. And if I don't..." He said nothing, but his silence said everything. I left his house just before sunset. As I stepped back into the street, the sky turned a bruised purple, clouds thick and low. The wind carried a scent I hadn't smelled since the attic, wax and ash. I drove back to the house. The road felt longer than I remembered, like the distance had stretched, like the house was pulling me back from a place deeper than the earth. I stood at the doorstep, journal in one hand, charm in the other. The key turned easily. Inside, the house welcomed me with silence. Not peace, asterisk, asterisk expectation, asterisk, asterisk. The stairs creaked louder. The air was colder. The walls looked different, stained, warped, like they were breathing. The attic ladder was already down. Of course it was. I climbed. The attic was exactly as I left it. The circle, the symbols, the air thick with static. And in the center, the mirror waited. It was pulsing again. I opened the journal. The last page had changed once more. Speak the name. Burn the gate. Bury the voice. The charm in my hand began to warm. Then the candle lit. Blue flame. A wind picked up inside the attic. Though no windows were open, I knelt before the mirror. The figure inside was no longer me. It was Elias. He looked straight at me and smiled. He smiled, but it wasn't a warm smile. It wasn't human. It stretched too wide, too slow, like it had to remember how to move a mouth. His eyes, glassy and hollow, held no emotion, only vacancy. Something stood behind in the reflection, but I couldn't make it out. A shape, shifting, crawling in and out of the shadows like smoke underwater. My knees trembled. The attic air had grown colder. The flame from the candle flickered, but didn't go out. I could feel my breath cloud in front of my face. Even though it was the middle of summer, the mirror began to hum again, that low, aching vibration that I felt in my chest more than heard. I gripped the charm in one hand and held the journal open with the other, scanning the page. Speak the name. But the name wasn't written anywhere. I flipped through the journal frantically, each page turning more brittle than the last. Every entry from Elias grew less coherent, filled with strange diagrams, looping symbols, and fragments of words not meant for human tongues. But there, halfway down one of the last entries, scrawled between two ink blots, was a word I didn't recognize. Naltherith. The moment I whispered it aloud, the attic groaned like a living thing. The wind inside picked up. The flame turned white. The mirror cracked, just slightly, like a hairline fracture spreading from the bottom corner. The reflection shuddered, and Elias's face changed. It melted. His features stretched and warped. His eyes widened and darkened until they were hollow pits. His mouth toward the corners, opening too far, exposing rows of teeth that didn't belong. His head tilted impossibly to the side, and then he screamed. But I didn't hear it with my ears. It tore through my skull from the inside out, echoing inside my thoughts, splitting them in half. I dropped the journal and fell backward, clutching my head. My eyes watered. Blood dripped from my nose. The attic floorboards writhed beneath me, as if something was crawling just under the surface. Burn the gate. I crawled toward a candle, eyes burning, lungs gasping for air thick with rot and smoke. I tipped the journal into flame. It caught instantly, unnatural blue fire devouring the pages like they were soaked in gasoline. The mirror cracked again. The wind roared louder. The shadows in the mirror bled out into the room. They didn't walk. They slid, crawled, reaching with arms that bent wrong, with fingers too long, too thin, shapes that flickered with every blink, as if my brain couldn't decide what they truly looked like. The candle exploded, sending shards of wax across the attic. The light was gone. Only darkness now. Cold hands grabbed my ankles. I screamed and kicked, scrambling to the far corner of the attic. I couldn't see the mirror anymore. Only the shapes moving in the pitch black, outlined faintly in that awful, pale blue glow that came from nowhere. Bury the voice. I didn't know what that meant, but I had one more weapon, the charm. I held out in front of me, shaking. Get back! I yelled. My voice cracked. The nearest shape halted, then hissed. A sound like static, glass breaking, and something dry being torn apart all at once. It retreated slightly, the others following. The charm in my hand grew hotter, pulsing in rhythm with my heart. I crawled toward the mirror. It had fallen, shattered completely. The glass lay in fragments across the attic floor, but something still glowed faintly in the largest piece. A sliver of that other world still open. I raised the charm high and slammed it down on the shard. A flash of white, A scream, not mine. And then silence. Total. No wind. No voices. No humming. The attic stood still, heavy with soot and ash. My hands trembled as I crawled back from the broken mirror. The charm was cracked now, dull and lifeless in my palm. I didn't wait. I climbed down the attic ladder, my muscles sore, my legs barely functioning. I left everything behind. The journal, the candles, even a box of matches. Down the stairs, out the front door, into my car. I drove without thinking, just away, as far as the tank would take me. I checked into a motel about 50 miles out of town. One of those highway-side places where no one asks questions. I collapsed onto the bed, fully clothed, and stared at the ceiling. I stayed there for hours. At some point, I slept, but it didn't last. Because at 2:49 a.m., I woke up to a sound. Not in the room. Inside my head. A whisper. You didn't bury the voice. I sat up, my skin crawling. The air in the room had grown cold. And in the corner, across from the bed, I saw it. A single shard of mirror, lying on the carpet, reflecting something behind me. I turned slowly. Nothing there. But the whisper came again, closer now, right behind my ear. We listened. Now it's your turn. I didn't scream. I couldn't. I ran. I didn't grab my bag. Didn't take my phone. Just ran out into the night barefoot. The parking lot gravel cutting my feet, adrenaline numbing the pain. I drove to a rest stop and sat under the buzzing light of a vending machine, my hands shaking too hard to hold a cup of coffee. Every shadow now looked like a shape. Every reflection, a window. And I knew this wasn't over. Elias may have opened the door, but I let them out. It's been 3 days since I left the house. I haven't gone back. I won't, but whatever I brought with me, it didn't stay behind. I've been trying to convince myself that I'm just exhausted, that the sleepless nights, the fear, the adrenaline, they're playing tricks on me, but that doesn't explain the messages. They started showing up on my bathroom mirror. At first, it was just steam, condensation from the shower forming odd shapes, symbols maybe, like those I'd seen in Elias's journal. I wiped them away without thinking, but the next time I looked, they were back, clearer, more deliberate. The third time, it wasn't symbols. It was a word. Hearken. The lights in the motel bathroom flickered when I read it. I slammed the door shut and stayed under the covers the entire night. The charm, cracked and dull as it was, clutched in my fist. By the morning, the word was gone. I moved again that day. A different town, different motel. Paid cash. Changed my name on the register. I thought I could outrun this. But you can't run from something that lives inside shadows. Something that speaks in silence and waits behind every reflection. The mirror in the new room covered it with a towel. Didn't matter. That night, I heard the breathing again. Not loud, not angry, just steady, measured, coming from the closet. I didn't move, didn't dare, but it never opened. The sound stayed there, like it was testing me, watching, waiting. I slept with the light on, my back to the wall, and I dreamt dreams of the attic, of Elias, of that awful, crooked smile. But the worst dream was different. I was in a field, completely still, with fog rolling across the ground. I could see the silhouettes of people, figures, standing in a circle far ahead, heads tilted upward, hands raised, chanting. Their voices weren't in any language I recognized, but I felt the meaning like a cold nail driving into my skull. They were calling something, something beneath, and at the center of their circle was a mirror, a tall, freestanding mirror covered in veins and cracks. Something pounded behind it, something trapped. Then I heard my name, not from them, from behind me. I turned, and there I was, staring at myself. But my reflection wasn't copying my movements. It smiled, tilted its head, raised its hand and pointed to the mirror. Open again. I woke up with blood in my mouth. I'd bit my tongue so hard it split. This afternoon I made a decision. I need answers. Real ones. So I drove back. Not to the house. Not yet. I needed to speak with someone who might actually know what happened there before me, not just rumors from neighbors, but someone with records. So I went to the county clerk's office, where old property files are kept. At first, the woman behind the desk didn't find much. The usual paperwork, deeds, tax forms, utility records. But then she found something older. Your place was originally owned by someone named Elias Merrow, she said. He bought the land in 1963, built the house himself. I nodded. I already knew that. She squinted at the next paper. Then, that's odd. It says the house was condemned in 1971. Fire damage. Structure declared unsafe. My heart stopped. What do you mean? She turned the page. It says here the attic collapsed during a storm. No record of a rebuild. The property was left empty for decades. Shouldn't have been sold again. She looked up. Where exactly did you say this house was? I gave her the address. She frowned. There shouldn't be anything there but rubble. I drove straight to the address. I didn't know what to expect. A burned shell? Empty land? But it was there, exactly as I left it. Paint peeling. Door closed. Curtains fluttering. Alive. The house was never destroyed. Or maybe it came back. I parked down the street this time. Watched from a distance. No one around. No lights. But I could feel it watching me. I didn't go inside. Not yet. I walked around the property. Behind the house, under the weeds and vines, I found something new. A trapdoor. It wasn't there before. I would have noticed. It was built into the ground, hidden by old boards. The wood was soaked through rotting, but when I stepped on it, it didn't give. There was a chain looped through a rusted ring, and a lock. Not modern. Old. Iron. Carved with symbols. The same symbols from the mirror. I didn't open it. Not yet, but I heard something from below. 3 knocks. Slow. Even. As if someone asterisk or something asterisk was letting me know it knew I was there. I backed away and drove back to the motel. I don't know what's under that trapdoor, but I think Elias tried to seal it. Tried to lock it away. Whatever he summoned, it never left. It waited. And now that I've disturbed it, now that I've spoken the name, it's awake again. I can feel it in my skin, in my dreams, in every mirror, every reflection, every silence that stretches too long. They wanted to go back. They want me to open the door. I don't know if I can stop them. The next morning, I woke up with a headache that throbbed like a drum inside my skull. Every part of me felt raw and on edge, as if my nerves had been stretched too tight. The motel room was quiet, but the silence was suffocating. I avoided looking into any mirrors. I kept thinking about that trapdoor behind the house. The one I didn't dare open. What could be down there? I kept hearing those knocks in my mind, slow and steady, like a pulse. It felt like a warning, or maybe an invitation. I decided to do some research online, hoping to find anything about Elias Merrow beyond the sparse official records. What I found was a small collection of fragmented stories on obscure forums about his obsession with the occult, black magic, and strange rituals he performed in that house. People whisper about curses, about tenants who fled the property in terror, babbling about shadows and voices. One user claimed Elias had been trying to open a door to another realm, a gateway to something beyond human understanding. The more I read, the heavier the knot in my stomach grew. It wasn't just superstition or old rumors anymore. It was real, and it was in my life now. That night, I stayed awake longer than usual. The motel's cheap fluorescent light hummed quietly overhead. I tried to keep my mind busy, focusing on trivial things, plans for the next day, what groceries I needed, even remembering a song from years ago. But then the noises started. First, a faint scratching at the door. I ignored it, thinking it was the wind or a stray animal. Then came the heavy footsteps, slow, deliberate, just outside my room. I held my breath, heart pounding, waiting for the knocking or breathing to start again. Nothing, just silence. I got up, opened the door carefully, and peered out into the empty hallway. No one, no sounds. Back inside, I locked the door and sat down. trembling. The footsteps had come from the motel corridor, but I hadn't heard anyone approach or leave. The room suddenly felt colder. I wrapped myself tightly in the thin blanket and looked away from the mirror across the room. Then the light flickered, and in the shadow, I saw it, a dark figure standing still, its shape barely distinguishable but unmistakably there. I screamed. When I opened my eyes, it was gone, but the air still felt heavy, like something had passed through and left a chill behind. I don't know how much longer I can keep running. How long I can keep pretending this is just stress or imagination. Something is following me, watching, waiting, and I'm beginning to think it's no longer just the house. The following days were a blur of restless nights and jittery mornings. Every shadow seemed to stretch and bend just a little too strangely. Every sound felt amplified, every silence unbearably loud. I tried to keep busy, running errands, meeting a few people, but the weight in my chest never eased. The feeling that I wasn't alone was constant. One afternoon, while wandering a local bookstore, I found a small, dusty volume tucked between thicker, newer books. It was a diary, worn and yellow with age, its cover cracked and fragile. The name embossed faintly on the front was Elias Merrow. I bought it immediately. Back in my motel room, I opened the diary with trembling hands. The pages were filled with hurried, uneven handwriting, chronicling Elias's descent into obsession and madness. He wrote about rituals meant to open the veil and invite the unseen, about voices whispering secrets in the dead of night, about shadows moving just beyond the firelight. The entries grew darker. Elias spoke of strange figures appearing in mirrors, of cold spots that burned like fire, of a growing presence in a house that he called the Watcher. One passage caught my breath. Asterisk, the door beneath the floorboards must never be opened. It is a threshold to something terrible, something hungry. I have tried to seal it with iron and ritual, but the boundary grows weak. I fear we'll break through. If you find this, stay away. Let the door stay closed. Pray I was not too late. Asterisk, reading those words, a deep chill settled in me. Elias wasn't just a disturbed man. He was warning anyone who came after him. That night, I placed the diary beside my bed. I wanted answers, but I was terrified of what I might uncover next. As I lay down, the air grew thick and heavy. The room seemed to breathe with me, slow and deep. I heard the faint creak of floorboards, like footsteps pacing just outside the door. Then, soft scratching from the bathroom mirror. I forced myself to look. Written in the fog was a new message. Open. My hands shook as I stared at the single word on the mirror. Open. The coldness in the room deepened, pressing it on me from all sides. I wanted to scream, to run, to erase what I'd seen, but I was frozen in place. The word glistened in the dim light, as if freshly written by unseen fingers. I swallowed hard and forced myself to stand. The diary was still on the bed, its pages fluttering in a breeze I couldn't feel. I closed it and took a deep breath, knowing I couldn't avoid it any longer. I had to face what was waiting beneath the floorboards. Back at the old house, the floor creaked ominously as I approached the trapdoor. The scent of damp earth and something metallic filled my nostrils. My fingers fumbled with the rusty latch, but it gave way with a soft click. The darkness below was thick, swallowing the beam of my flashlight hole. I descended carefully, the narrow stairs groaning under my weight. At the bottom, the air was icy and stale. The walls were lined with strange symbols, scrawled in charcoal, faded but unmistakable. Candles, long burned down to nubs, surrounded a circle etched deep into the dirt floor. I felt a presence there, something watching, waiting. A sudden rush of cold air whipped past me, and I heard it. Heavy, dragging footsteps approaching from the darkness. I turned, flashlight shaking in my hand, and saw a figure emerge, shadowy, indistinct, yet terrifyingly real. Its eyes glowed faintly, hollow and empty. It moved closer, the air thick with a choking chill. I stumbled backward, heart pounding, trying to find the stairs. The creature's breath was cold on my neck. It reached out with something clawed and unseen. I fled, scrambling up the steps, slamming the trapdoor shut behind me. back in the daylight. The house seemed less ominous, but the fear clung to me like a second skin. I packed what I could and left without looking back. As I drove away, the rearview mirror caught a glimpse of the house. Silent, watching. But I still hear the footsteps at night, the whispering just beyond hearing. And sometimes, I swear I feel a cold presence sitting at the edge of my bed. The door may be closed, but whatever lives in that house is not gone. It's waiting for the next person to open it again.